Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about applying the last two videos that I did about programming to your parenting. Everybody's home with their kids with COVID, and it's a great time to put together a plan. And there's a couple things you can do. Not only can you pick something and have your kids help you catch yourself. For example, if you say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, and you say that all the time, you can teach your kids to actually call you out on it. Of course, you have to be open to that. That goes back to the open mind, right? um, and you can also employ your kids to not only help you recognize languaging, but behavior, and give them permission. Not only that, I would suggest you pay them in some way. You give them a reward for catching you. Maybe you have a jar and you have to put money in it, and at the end that you give it to them. You don't even have to tell them if you don't want to. Um, but not only does this train them and show them that you're learning to be a better person and a better human, so you're teaching them that lesson, you can also teach them the concepts. So, for example, if you say, I'm sorry all the time, most likely they're going to say they're sorry all the time. Teach them that they are not a sorry human, because we are human beings have a tendency to feel shamed and worthless, and it's a deep-seated belief system, and then our behavior is structured around that so that we can feel worthy, we can feel loved. And it's just a really weird thing, and it took me years and years of working on myself before I could see that. A lot of times a better than program, like people who behave like they're better than you, is often a less than program being played out that way. So in other words, they don't feel worthy, so they always have to prove that they're worthy, prove that they're good, prove that they are the best at whatever they do. So they have to prove themselves in order to get love and attention. And that's probably how it was set up in their household. And that's what they think, that's how they think the world is. So that's one thing. The other thing is with kids, so it used to drive me crazy when someone would call my kids either a good boy. They'd say, oh, you're such a good boy. The downside of that, now that seems kind of harmless, right? But what can be the groundwork that can be laid in their brain is that somehow they're bad, and that they are inherently bad, and that they have to constantly prove that they're good, and they'll never be good enough. And so I would suggest that you take character qualities. I actually have a list of them somewhere I'll have to pull out. But take character qualities and teach them that. I did that with my kids. I can give you a couple of examples. Um, so I would, because this is the thing, your kids can be talented. You might have a very athletic child, and you might have someone who is academically, stellar. And then you have this kid in the middle, or it doesn't have to be in the middle. I'm just using that as an example. But you have a kid in the middle who's just a really great person, just a great human being, but they're not good at sports, and they're not good at math, or they're not good at English, or they're not good at school. And now somehow they're going to be doing the comparison game. And we set it up that way because we're like, oh, you're so talented, you're such a good athlete, Not that there's anything wrong with that specifically, but I would encourage you to use character traits and build those up. In other words, you can be diligent and be an athlete, as an athlete, you can be diligent in your practice and diligent in, playing games and working on yourself and lifting weights, whatever it is. And you can be diligent in music, you can be diligent in art, you can be diligent in taking out the trash. So now you are praising their diligence instead of their talents. Because some people are just naturally inclined, and they have these amazing, just natural talents that they find their way with, and it somehow puts them above the other child. So work on, and I can send you a list if you want to email me. It's m@teamshelton.com. But like we used to have patience. For example, I would say, what is patience? And they'd say, waiting with a happy spirit. So it teaches them to wait, but not only wait, to enjoy waiting and not waste that time being disgruntled or being, frustrated or, impatient, in other words. Impatience can actually drive a lot of great behavior, but the challenge is there any joy in it? Because in my opinion, it's really about seeking joy, and joy comes from within. So if I'm frustrated all the time, I'm not really in joy, which is what enjoy means. And so that's another word you can teach them, being in joy. Are you enjoying yourself? Let's enjoy ourselves. What does it take to do that? But there's, tenacious, diligence. There is gentleness, kindness. All of those things are character traits that you can work with all of your kids on, and maybe even, if you're like me, maybe yourself. Because my kids would say, "Are you being kind?" And I was like, "Ah." But there's a whole thing around, after I lost my son Phil in a car accident, um, gosh, I'd love to have those years back. I'd love to have a minute back with him. And so look at your kids as what they are. Like they're just these amazing little humans that help us learn. And I see all these funny videos about, going in the pantry and eating yourself to death because your kids are driving you crazy. I'm going to say stop giving them the steering wheel. Like ground yourself. And instead of teaching them to, let others drive them crazy, because no one can really drive you crazy unless you give them the steering wheel, unless you give them permission. People say, "Oh, they pushed my buttons." It's like, well, put your freaking buttons away and stop letting people push your buttons. They're your freaking buttons. So, these are things that you can teach your kids, but you're going to have to get your own shit together because your kids are going to be the way you are. So you need to decide how you want your kids to be and then be that way. You're not going to force them to be something that you're not. And it takes a lot of effort. And I can tell you, I have some pretty fucking amazing kids. They're adults now. And, I learned this stuff late in the game. My older kids, I didn't feel like, they benefited from it as much. But my middle child and down, they benefited a lot from it. And I think they're phenomenal people, humans, responsible, and could I have done something different if I had had this information earlier? Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So hopefully this will help you as parents. Tomorrow I think I will share how I apply this in real estate, which is really interesting. So make sure you check back tomorrow and I will give you some more information about your mindset and what you can do to clean it up. All right. Have an amazing day.